The war in Gaza is barreling towards a grim anniversary. This deadly year, sparked by a terrorist atrocity and met with an often merciless response, has changed the way that many people think about an historic dispute. Never in our lifetimes has there been such active debate about Israel's role in the modern world and whether the United States and its allies should back it. Protests and counter-protests have brought anti-Semitism to the fore, along with the charge that it sometimes insulates Israel from criticism. My next two guests have vivid opinions on these big issues and have had a very public feud. We're bringing them together for what we intend, I hope, to be a proper debate. The topics will be the Israel-Hamas war, anti-Semitism in public life, American involvement in Israel, and Israeli involvement in the United States. And we'll even talk about Michael Jackson, who is relevant to this debate. Both guests will get roughly equal speaking time and a chance to question each other. Speaking of the other guests is not encouraged. Ad hominem attacks are strongly discouraged. But knowing these two as I do, I can make no promises. Returning to Uncensored, host of the Candace podcast, Candace Owens, and the author of The Israel Warrior and the Michael Jackson tapes, Rabbi Shmuley. So welcome to both of you. First of all, it's great you're doing this. You've had a public feud for a couple of years now. You've torn into each other in various forums. This is your chance to take each other on. And at the center of this, as I said in the intro there, is a very serious global story, which is the Israel-Hamas war and all the complexities that come away from that. I want to give you both the chance to make an opening statement. So Rabbi Shmuley, you won the toss. We didn't really actually toss, but you both agreed you can do this. You go first. Your opening remarks.
Thank you, Pierce, for having me. And Candace, thank you for debating me. I have spent my life bringing together the Black and Jewish communities, emphasizing that we share not only a history of shared persecution, but of spiritual promise. Today we debate an American tragedy, a woman of unique eloquence who has abused that eloquence to become simultaneously the foremost anti-Black rhetorician in all of the United States and the foremost anti-Semite in America. The statements that Candace has made against her own community, that they cry wolf and constantly say that they're victims of racism. Her attacks on George Floyd, a man who was suffocated to death for a $20 counterfeit note saying that he was a horrible human being. A woman who went up in front of CPAC and said, "I was never a slave in America," as if that's the only form of discrimination, is what has led her community to call her not Candace, but Clandis. The first ever female Black woman who appears in her rhetoric against Blacks, calling LeBron James dumb and stupid, an icon to the Black community, as Clandis. Simultaneously, you have the Jewish community beginning to call her not Candace Owens, but Candace Ovens, because her Goebbels-style rhetoric against Jews, that Jews are nearly all pedophiles. The State of Israel will set up a Theodor Herzl, a pedophile, as a haven for pedophiles. That Judaism is a demonic, satanic cult that only protects pedophiles. And by the way, her absolute obsession with Jewish sexuality and Jewish genitalia, the first lady of France, Brigitte Macron's genitalia, is disturbing. It's one of the reasons I think she hates Sigmund Freud so much, because she's a Freudian field dream in terms of his arguments that the greater the sexual suppression and repression, the greater we see violence. But when you say that the Jews killed JFK because he was about to ostracize Israel, when you invent all of these fabrications out of whole cloth, what is the result? The result is the demonization of Jews that leads to violence. Pierce, just 1 week ago, 2 days after Candace falsely accused me, as she has for 2 years, of being a murderer, of threatening to kill her, something for which she will face legal action because you cannot malign a rabbi and his daughter as murderers. 2 days later, I was swatted in my house, where 5 police cars had to break into my house because Mayor Michael Wilds of Englewood, New Jersey, received an email, arguably from one of Candace's followers, after she said essentially what Henry II says, "Who will rid me of this troublesome priest?" which leads directly to the murder of Thomas Becket, who today is a Catholic saint, of course. We were swatted, and the FBI is now investigating Candace's rhetoric. They're investigating
Rabbi Shmuley, I'm interrupting because you've now
wait, just
you've now been speaking for 3 minutes.
One final point.
So Candace will get exactly the same amount of time. It's up to you, but it's an opening statement, right? And what I would say...
May I just say finally, if I may?
Well, if it's quick,
The biggest issue I have with Candace, to be honest, is that she claims to be a Christian. Candace, didn't Jesus say you're supposed to love your enemies? Is the love you show me that you call me filth twice on the last show that you did with Pierce a piece of filth? You're supposed to love your enemies. Is that turning the other cheek? And Pierce, you're an English gentleman. I've known you for many years. You allowed her to say that without even a piece of filth. When Jesus said that you're supposed to turn the other cheek, where have you ever turned the other cheek? When Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth, the arrogance, the nonstop attack against Jews, the demonization. If you are a Christian, then I am the second coming of Christ.
Okay, that's 4 minutes you've spoken to. Out of fairness, Candace, if you want to use 4 minutes to respond, you can. All I would note, Rabbi Shmuley, is you've spent 4 minutes personally attacking Candace Owens. I set this up as a debate about what is happening with the Israel-Hamas war, anti-Semitism, and so on and so on. You've turned it all completely, immediately, into an ad hominem onslaught against Candace.
How could you possibly say that? You are speaking to a woman who says the Jews are a ring of demonic pedophiles, and you're saying that I have no right to defend my people. You know, Pierce, you have to stop this once and for all. There was nothing ad hominem at all.
All right.
When Candace says that the black community
you've had your say.
is a bunch of crybabies,
okay.
Everything I said was policy.
I
could not disagree more.
Candace will now get the same amount of time, if you want it, Candace, to respond.
Thank you, Piers. And I don't think I really do need to respond to the ad hominem attacks. I think actually one of the things that plausibly unites people across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said. And trying to screen that as a defense of black people. The black people will never accept Rabbi Shmuley after Michael Jackson put him on a list of people who he felt were ruining his life. So you can stop your pleas with Black America, they won't work. Now, going back to the context of what you've asked us to speak about today, you know, I think one of the things that the world is recognizing and what we've always recognized is that there are radical fringe sects that break out within every single religion, amongst every race. There's white supremacy, there's black supremacy, there's radical Islam, there are all of these Christ cults around the world. And I think right now it's important for people to understand that radical Judaism is also a thing, and you're watching an example of it right now on your screen. The person sitting across from me, or sitting next to me, I guess, posted on his Facebook page in 2016 a tribute to someone who he said was his mentor. That was Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. He said he was his mentor and his friend. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Rabbi Schneerson, there were some Jews who believed that he was and is the Messiah. So rejecting Christ, but believing that that rabbi was his Messiah. Now, you may remember in the news recently, there was this radicalized faction of the Lubavitch Orthodox community in Brooklyn that were digging tunnels in Brooklyn and hurling benches at police officers. Well, and by the way, this is per the Times of Israel, that faction of individuals are followers of Rabbi Schneerson. So again, you have Rabbi Shmuley who believes that that's his mentor. They believed that he was the Messiah. What is it? It becomes important to understand, what did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews. And you don't have to take my word for it, because if I said it, they would say that's anti-Semitism. You should instead take the word of the two Jewish professors who translated his work. Those authors' names were Israel Shahak and Norton Mezvinsky, and their book was entitled Jewish Fundamentalism in Israel. From that book, we learned that Shmuley's mentor, Schneerson, describes the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. And he says, quote, "Thus, we do not have a case of profound change in which a person is merely on a superior level. The body of a Jewish person is of totally different quality from the body of all nations of the world." And he talks about the substance of the Jewish body versus the substance of non-Jews, saying that the inner quality, quote, is so different and so great that the body should be considered completely different species. So that is a belief, and you can go through his speeches and you will see that he continually talks about how non-Jews should be treated, and that, again, we are a different species. This is what Rabbi Shmuley believes in. We have to come to terms with the fact that there are Jewish radicals, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to call them out. I'm glad that you brought up my rhetoric about Black Lives Matter, the organization, and which was basically allowing Black criminals to take to the street to burn down, to loot, and to riot in the name of racism, because it shows that I'm on equal footing here, that across the board, I do not support supremacism, whether it's coming from my community or whether or not it is coming from yours. And I think the entire world is now paying attention and wondering what is going on in Israel. What is this government? Is this a radical fringe government? And many people are concluding that the answer to that question is yes.
Okay, those are the two opening statements.